Hey everyone, this is David Lee Khim, co-founder of Omniscient Digital and today's host of The Long Game. In this episode, we chat with Johann Wrede. Johann leads UserTesting's global marketing, driving market expansion, customer engagement, and positioning UserTesting as the go-to platform for human insights. With over 25 years of experience in developing, selling, and marketing customer databases, CRM, and CX solutions, he's a very passionate advocate for exceptional customer experiences. And he talks a lot about this in his episode about his time being chief marketing and experience officer at Emburse. In this conversation, we talk about AI being the new front door to brands and the illusion that marketers have of controlling the brand. He shares how he approaches keeping his team and the overall organization focused on the customer, which is a theme that you might recall hearing across many episodes with other guests on The Long Game. He also shares his big bet on brand that makes his CFO a little bit uncomfortable. Throughout this entire conversation, Johann shared a lot of great advice and some great reminders, and I found myself just vigorously scribbling down notes throughout the entire conversation. So I think you're going to learn a lot. I did. So let's get into it.
It's good to meet you, David.
Yeah, great to meet you, Johann. I'm excited to have you on and talk about all things marketing, brand, and of course, AI. One thing I did want to mention before we jump into everything is I saw that you joined UserTesting back in October 24. And in this Q1 2026 alone, a lot of news came out, huh? The user interviews acquisition, Forrester Wave leader, shipped user testing for Figma. You've been keeping busy. How are things feeling on your end?
Yeah, things are great. I feel like AI is such a good thing for us because in this age where people are making all these decisions, more people are builders and creators, more decisions are being made about what is being built for people. So understanding what people actually want is becoming more important. And so I think this is great for our business, and it's been a whirlwind start to the year with the acquisition of user interviews and strengthening our participant network, and then Figma integration. We want to be where people are working. I think that's sort of the modern way to be. We don't want to leave our primary tool, and so it's been a busy but great year so far.
Yeah, especially with all the AI and vibe coding, I keep a lot of tabs on it. And the pattern I'm noticing is there's a lot of building. There's less of asking, is this actually valuable? And who will actually want to use this? And if so, is it even usable? So very, very glad to hear that you're all kind of riding this wave and seeing people are getting a lot of value out of it now.
Yeah, for me as a marketer, what's interesting is that I feel like it's a microcosm. The software development lifecycle and the marketing content creation lifecycle are in a very similar place, which is we can build anything and we can build it so fast that the act of creation is no longer the bottleneck.
Yeah.
And so then the important question can we build it? The important question is, should we build it?
Should we? Yeah.
And like actually being sensitive to your audience and asking the question to say, if I create this, am I just putting more dust into the universe, or am I giving my audience or my user community or whoever you're trying to serve, am I giving them something real and valuable that gives them value, but also creates business and economic value for my company? And I think that's where I find this funny intersection of what I do as a marketer and what the company that I am a marketer for does for an entire industry or set of industries. It's a really interesting place to be.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting too, because you do have a background in like as a developer. So you have the builder side, you have the marketing side, you also have like the customer side where it's all kind of triangulating together. So it's fascinating.
Yeah. This is my nerd renaissance. Like, I'm really leaning back in. I'm vibe coding. I'm really leaning back into my early days of writing code. And oftentimes I sit at my desk and I laugh and I think how far I've come since I would write programs on my Commodore 64.
Yeah, I do want to get to what you're vibe coding. We're gonna have a little bit of an arc here. Where I did want to start us is in one of the recent interviews I listened to that you did, you use this phrase that AI is the new front door to brands. So I'd love if you could kind of set the framing for how you view that and how marketers should approach that now. Because I think another angle you had is there's control is an illusion now for brands. So how would you kind of frame this up?
Yeah, look, I think if we think about the way that Google worked pre-Gemini, right? You would get this little tiny paragraph-ish short sentence or so that you could give it, and then the person had to click through, and they came to your website and they experienced your brand the way you wanted them to experience it, with your branding, your colors, your imagery, all of the things that create the feeling that we love about a brand, right? Like, it helps us connect, it helps us identify. And so in many ways, for brands, the homepage was the front door. Now, right, everybody, if you're using Google, you're loving the Gemini results up at the top. You're not really scrolling down. We're seeing massive drop off and click through. If you're using other tools, AI forward tools like Perplexity or ChatGPT or Claude, pick your preference. It's telling you. So if you ask it, like, tell me about user testing, it will tell you what it knows about user testing. And it will abstract it. It's not going to present it in your brand colors with your brand imagery and your words exactly. It's going to take all of what you've given the tool, the way it's consumed your website, it's consumed all of your materials. It will bring in other elements from Reddit and other places and put that together. And so that's the front door now. That's the first impression.
Yeah.
And that's where control is this illusion. Like, we can't control how people feel about us. The best we can do is hope to influence that. And of course, that means that we have to be smart about how we optimize what we put out onto the internet, the open internet, because that's where the LLMs are trained, obviously. And so that's where I feel like when people say, like, oh, I'm going to control the way that the LLM presents my brand, it's like, I don't think you can.
Yeah.
I think you can try to influence it. You can try to move that forward. But at the end of the day, unless you can control what people say about you on Reddit.
People are trying. So that's a question we get a lot, because we run Omniscient Digital, we do SEO and GEO and AI visibility for clients. And we get that question all the time. Like, ChatGPT doesn't talk about our brand correctly. So how do you respond? Like, how are marketers supposed to influence these outputs?
Well, I think this is like asking me how the Google algorithm works, right? Like, I think the best we can do, the way I think about it is, the goal of one of these engines, one of these LLMs, is to compress knowledge. Because obviously, when we interact with Claude or ChatGPT, it feels like they know everything about everything, but they don't. What they've done is they've taken a lot of, imagine taking a textbook and taking all of the connector words out of the textbook, and take all that stuff out. Your textbook would be significantly smaller, right? And then
take out all the pictures. Yeah.
Take out all of the stuff that is not core knowledge. All of the explanatory text, you take all that stuff out and you strip it down. It's semantic compression. So what you're doing is you're retaining the semantics, but not all of the details. And that's really what happens with these generative engines. And so the goal is to pre-compress. So take as much of the fluff out, so that when the LLM gets what you're giving it, it doesn't have to do the job. You've done it for it. So you're removing all of the extraneous elements. So what you're giving it is what it's likely going to keep and move forward with, as opposed to further compressing it or trying to figure out what is the important part.
Yeah.
Right. Even something as simple as marketers love 3 adjectives in a noun. Right. It's bigger, better, faster, stronger, cheaper, simpler. Right. Like pick your thing. Right? It's always like 3 adjectives in a noun. Well, if you do that, the LLM is going to pick one. So which one do you want it to pick?
Mm-hmm.
So if you just pick one, if you use the one that's most important to you, then you're guaranteed that that's what the LLM will pick up. And so it's really about being smart about semantic compression, making sure that the kinds of content that you're putting out are very clear, and thinking more about how is it going to be consumed by one of these engines, as opposed to how will it be consumed by a human, because the likelihood of human consumption goes down every single day.
Yeah.
People just aren't clicking through. And I wish I had a statistic to cite, but I think it's changing so rapidly that the reality is that if you go and you look at click-through rates on things, it's dropping off really precipitously.
Yeah, I mean, we've done the research. I don't have the percentages in front of me, but click-through rates are down from Google search. Even like click rates and LLM like outputs are low. People are talking about these citations, but ChatGPT just decreased the number of citations it even shows you. So it used to show you 10 citations. Now it shows you 2. So it decreases the likelihood there's even a click there. One thing that is interesting about what you're saying is the information compression, because the way that we describe it to people is LLMs look at all the information about your brand on the internet and kind of give you an average, let's say. And so your website, maybe people aren't landing on there, but it is one way to influence the LLMs, but it's only one site of hundreds, maybe thousands or hundreds of thousands talking about your brand. So how does one start thinking about maintaining brand consistency? Like maybe asking how to influence LLMs is different, but maybe you're talking about like, how do you maintain that brand consistency across those different properties, so that you're trying to get people to talk about your brand, people and LLMs to talk about your brand correctly?
I mean, I hate to say it, it's diet and exercise, right? Like this is the part that hasn't changed when it comes to brand, is at the end of the day, like you know, if I could figure out how to get people to say what I wanted them to say on Reddit or any of these social platforms, besides paying them as influencers, like I would have the most successful agency on earth. I think the reality of this is just you have to do the hard work of being a good brand. You have to take care of your customers. You have to be good to work with. You have to stand behind your products, right? Like if you do good things for your customer, if you are true to your brand and your vision as a brand, and you show up that way authentically, people will say things about you that will ultimately help you. And I think it's brands that have real clarity of vision, that have a high degree of consistency in the way that they respond to customers, in the way they show up in the marketplace, in their actions and in their marketing and in their customer communications and every aspect, that consistency will be rewarded. Brands that are unclear about who they are, brands that use inconsistent language to talk about what they do, brands that do not deliver experiences that match what their customers are expecting, that's where you get into trouble. And that's where you get all this divergence across these different properties. And then you wind up with inconsistency, you wind up with negativity, you wind up with a very different picture. And so it really is just sort of that diet and exercise, make a promise, keep a promise, be consistent in the way that you talk about yourself, regardless of the setting, whether it's in marketing materials, customer support, the whole gamut, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm connecting the dots here of your previous role at Emburst, where you're Chief Marketing and Experience Officer. And I think you described it as, I make sure that we deliver on what we say we'll deliver, and we say what we'll deliver that we're actually going to deliver, like connecting the two thing. And even then there's the other piece of like product experience, right? As a marketer, you don't really get to control the product. And maybe Redditors are saying they don't like your product. No matter how good of a marketer you are, I don't think you can change how do you feel about that?
Well, and this is where we get into the question of what is the role of a CMO.
Mm-hmm.
And I think at Imburse, I was also responsible for customer success. So
Mm-hmm.
I talked to the team about, like, I've got the make the promise team and the keep the promise team, right? Like, and I think that's where I don't see myself as responsible for marketing. I see myself responsible for how the market understands user testing.
Yeah.
And that means that I need to care about the product experience. I need to care about the customer experience, what happens post sale. And so when I talk to my marketing team about the customer journey, I don't just talk about the buying journey. I think holistically. I make sure that we're looking at the post-purchase moments, right? Adoption, long-term consumption, advocacy, expansion, right? All of those moments in the customer journey, I think marketers need to pay attention to and work to influence.
Mm-hmm.
My designers on the marketing side work really closely with our product design team to ensure that we have consistent brand visual language that ties together our marketing material with the in-app experience. And certainly it's not identical, because when we talk about design, you have functional design and application, which is different than emotional design in marketing, right? In marketing, I'm trying to evoke an emotional response. In an application, I'm trying to get you to pay attention to an alert. And so they don't have to be the same, but they have to be coupled.
Yeah.
And so that's where it's critical that we maintain that. And then when we talk about field enablement, my solution marketing team, they don't just enable the salespeople. They work with customer success. They work with support to make sure that those teams understand the way that we're positioning capabilities, the way that we're handling objections, the way that we want to respond when customers inquire. And so that creates consistency between what we say in marketing, what our sellers are saying when they engage with customers, what our customer support people are saying when they're responding to incidents, and what our customer success people are saying when they're meeting for quarterly business reviews and talking about the long-term health of our relationship.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean by the hard work of diet and exercise and consistency, right? Like just showing up with the consistent language, a consistent approach. And so this is a really long-winded answer, but that's what I see the role of a chief marketing officer to be. It's not just about, building the pipeline and making sure that we're showing, that we have the right conversion rates and all of those things, but it's really about looking at our brand and how we turn up across the entire customer's journey.
Yeah, I admire that a lot. And even something as simple as unifying a designer on a marketing team and making sure they're working with a designer on a product team. I can recall when I've looked at a website and I think, oh, that's a very sleek website. I sign up for the product and it's just night and day what's happening here. One thing that is interesting is how I don't know if this is what you would call it, but you're connecting these various previously were silos, maybe, depending on the company that you're at. And it seems like something that's embedded into the culture where there is this cross-functional collaboration rather than folks saying, hey, stay in your lane or anything like that. So maybe for the other marketing leaders, fellow CMOs, VPs of marketing who want to drive this sort of alignment, I'm not sure what the culture was when you came into user testing, but how do you drive that sort of alignment and get that buy-in to say, hey, this is going to be a little messy, but we do need to, let's try to make it consistent for the customer. How do you do that?
My view on culture is that, a lot of people talk about cultural fit when they hire an executive. And I like to think about it as a cultural add. Like, what am I going to add and contribute to the culture? Mm-hmm. What do I bring to this organization? And, for me, it starts in the interview process, making sure that that the organization is ready for what I would like to bring, which is this belief that every moment is a brand moment, and so as the steward of the brand, I need to make sure that we're involved and engaged in all of those moments. It's also good business, and it's really logical. And you can look at various examples. The most common one is Apple, right? Like, you go on the website, you go to their retail location, you interact with their devices, and there is a massive consistency in the design language between all of these really divergent experiences.
Yeah.
But it's like, literally, the first time I walked into an Apple store, I felt like I was walking into iOS. I was like, okay, yeah, this is exactly what this is exactly what I expect. It's all aluminum and light wood and really modern and slick and intuitive, and it's easy. And so, those kinds of conversations, these become the truths that are self-evident. People get it, and they go, oh yeah, that is true. And the framing I always use, my hack, and since you asked about like for other marketing leaders, the thing that has served me well in my career is to always flip any conversation to the outside in perspective. Because when you deal with stakeholders, everybody is always focused on, this is my domain, this is my topic, and this is my part of the process. And by nature, in order to make companies manageable, they're siloed. We have different leaders who are responsible for different parts, right? That's how we make this all manageable. But at the end of the day, the customer doesn't see the silos. They don't see the different teams. They just see you as one brand. And so they don't really know or care about the difference between talking to somebody in sales or somebody in support or somebody at a trade show. It doesn't matter to them. They just see themselves as interacting with the brand. And so when you flip the conversation around and you say, well, that's nice. And, okay, I totally get it, what you're trying to do internally, but here's how the customer experiences that. Mm-hmm. Right? Let's talk about the way the customer experiences these moments in their journey with us. Then it suddenly becomes very obvious that where the gaps are, and that some of these silos create gaps. And then the question is, okay, who's the single executive that's responsible for closing those gaps? And generally speaking, it's crickets at that point.
Yeah.
Because we have different executives responsible for different functions of the business. There's only one who's really, truly cross-functional, and that's the CEO. And they're not the customer experience person. Mm-hmm. And so some industries have chief experience officers that focus on this. But my view is in B2B software world, it's incumbent on the chief marketing officer to step into that role, advocate for the customer's perspective, partner with the chief customer officer to say what we really need is a focus on every experience is a customer experience, and how do we create consistency in that chain?
Yeah, it reminds me of a saying we used to say during my time at HubSpot. They used to say solve for the customer, SFTC, and we should never have to explain our org chart to a customer. That's when you lose trust with them. So it's really interesting hearing the patterns here. You had mentioned just now that everything a marketing team or a marketing organization does is brand marketing. And so it makes me wonder, how do you bring that to your team at UserTesting? And what are the things that you and your team are focused on right now?
I mean, we're focused on adding value, and that's my number one edict. Is for marketing, we don't market the value, we deliver the value as part of what we do. And I have there are things that I like to do in my organization. For example, I don't believe in product marketing.
Oh,
I fundamentally don't believe, and this is controversial, right?
We have to dig into this.
But people don't want to buy your product. Like, unless you're selling a Ferrari or a vacation, people don't want to buy your product. Honestly, like the what do we lose to the most? And I would probably bet my next paycheck that anybody who works for a B2B business who is selling into enterprises, the number one competitor that they lose to is no decision. Mm-hmm. So That's because they don't want to buy your product. If they can find a way to do it better, faster, and cheaper without you, you're just adding one more tool in the stack. You're adding one more vendor to deal with. It's just more complexity, right? And every CFO I've ever worked with is like, so how do we get your tool stack down, right? How do we get that MarTech budget to come down? So I don't believe in product marketing. What I believe in is solution marketing. People will spend money to solve their problems, right? Like if you look at the parallel in the consumer universe, all of the weight loss drugs, every weight loss drug on earth is the most profitable drug that drug maker makes, perhaps with the exception of Viagra, right? Like, but there are these problems that people are willing to pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars a month to solve. Mm-hmm. Right? They don't want to take an injection. Nobody wants to stick a needle in their body, but people are willing to do that and pay the money for it because it solves a problem. And so for me, the parallel in the B2B universe is I don't want people marketing the product. I want people marketing a solution to the customer's problem, which means that while, yes, we need to know what our product does, more importantly, we need to understand the challenges that our customers are grappling with. We have to fall in love with their problem so that we're the foremost experts in their problem so that we can build the trust and earn the right to talk to them about how we would solve their problem as a partner to them. But in doing that, you're delivering value. So when I look at the customer journey, like the content we produce, I want to offer guides and reports and insights to help you become aware of the challenges that you and others might be facing. I want to contextualize those challenges for you, help you make sense out of them, help you understand some of the machinery behind it that may be less obvious because you're down in it, right? And then I want to offer you an architecture for you to consider as a solution. And then if you're with me through that, that's the first part of my story arc. I talk to my marketers about the story arc, right? Like setting complication resolution. Like if I get you to that point, then I can start to offer you explanation, validation, and a call to action. But if I jump right in and start explaining to you, here's what my product does, and I'm marketing my product, then you're like, I don't know that I need your product. Why do I want your product? It doesn't help me grow more hair. It doesn't make me leaner. You're just going to add complexity to my life. So that's a lot of what we're working on is really, making sure that we're consistent across the customer journey, making sure that what we're creating adds value. And right now, our customers in user experience design and user experience research, their world is changing.
Yeah.
The software development lifecycle, a lot of our customers are either software companies or they are software teams inside of retail, banking, consumer products businesses, healthcare systems who are, anybody who has a digital app or even in-person experiences. This is changing so rapidly with the way that AI is influencing what a designer can do, what an engineer can do. Engineers are doing design, product managers are doing design, designers are doing engineering work, designers are doing it's just created a lot of chaos in their life. And so I think it's important for us to contextualize that for them and to help them understand that in this turmoil, the one thing that is consistent and the one thing that is important is talking to your customer, understanding what they need, understanding their problems deeply, understanding what motivates them, how they see the world, what they like, what they don't like, and solving for that, right? Just because we can build anything doesn't mean we should, right? Knowing what to build is everything.
Yeah, it's a little funny. We have a joke internally with my team of the one thing that every first step of marketing should be is talk to your customer, know your customer. And when our clients ask us, how do you build strategy? We always start with, give us 10 sales calls. We're going to listen to every single one. And the surprising thing is they're always surprised by that. But I feel like that should be the foundation for everything that we're doing here.
I think we have a tendency to believe that the answer is in something complex and arcane. Mm-hmm. We don't want to believe that it's really just diet and exercise, right? It really is. It's not our metabolic processes that make us overweight. It's the buckets of KFC that we love to eat, right? Like it's just, and that's the truth, right? People drift. There's this like, oh, we need to optimize this. We need to, in marketing, there's always this, we have to analyze the data. We have to see what the trends are. We have to, but also you should go and talk to your customer, and then like
just ask them.
Part of the appeal of working at UserTesting is I have unlimited access to UserTesting.
Yeah.
And so, we're like out there always asking. We run all sorts of interesting research internally, whether, we did a thing on Labubu, how people feel about that for our marketing content, but also, we test out our messaging, we test out our mission statement, we test out all kinds of things because we want to stay close to our customer. And to your point, David, if you lose sight of that, if you get so wrapped up in the marketing complexity and sciencing your way to optimization, it's easy to overlook the basics of diet and exercise. Just talk to customers, understand what they need, synthesize it, feed it back to them, focus on their problems, love their problems, and they'll trust you. And
you make it sound so easy, Johann.
it really is. It really.
I agree.
One of the things I coach salespeople on when I usually during sales kickoffs, I wind up doing a session on storytelling. And what I frame it up, I turn it into a conversation about discovery. Because in order to tell a story in a sales context, you actually have to know the setting, complication, and resolution, because those are the things that they're in your customer's business. They're not yours. Mm-hmm. So you have to ask the questions to ferret that stuff out so you can set the stage, and then you can help contextualize why things feel so hard, and then show them that you understand how they're thinking about solving those problems. And so it's really all about asking the customer questions and digging into what's going on in your business and why is that hard? All these open-ended questions. And that's where the magic happens, because asking questions builds trust. It helps you understand where they're coming from. They will literally give you the words to use in your sales presentation when you get to the explanation phase, when you want to explain how your product will help them. They've given you the words. They've told you exactly what they call the project and how they refer to things and where the gaps are in their business and what they call those gaps. And so then you can show up sounding like an expert because you listened and you use their language to talk to them, and they don't have to decode what you mean in your language and your product to their business. They've given it all to you. So it really is as simple as listening to your customer, asking questions, getting insight, getting feedback, incorporating that into the stuff you build.
That's going to be the title of this podcast, Listen to Your Customer. This is resonating a lot, because a big question I get right now on calls is, how do I decide what prompts to track in ChatGPT? Because AI visibility is the big thing right now, and the first question I always ask them is, well, have you listened to any sales calls? What questions are they asking on a call? Because they're probably asking ChatGPT that, and there's a light bulb moment that goes off, right? Of, oh yeah, I have so much of this available. We're recording all of our sales calls. That's a gold mine for figuring out your messaging. And it goes beyond AI visibility tracking, but messaging and positioning and how to talk about your product and solutions and all of that.
Yeah. And honestly, my favorite thing is going into, first of all, these tools have gotten so great now. You just go in and they have their own AI. You just go in and say, like, tell me about this, and you get a beautiful summary, right? But to your point, it's about the messaging, but it's also about informing marketing on what should we be building. Because if you listen to those questions, some of those you go, yeah, that's really appropriate of the customer to be asking a salesperson. But then some of it you're like, why don't we have that on the website? Why don't we have a piece of collateral around that? Why like, how did this person get to the point of talking to somebody not knowing that? Right. And so it's a gold mine to figure out how can you improve conversion by giving people the things that they wind up asking for later in the journey. You can accelerate a sales cycle if you help these people get the information before they talk to a seller, because then they get to the sales conversation and it can be really, really pointed. I completely agree. I think, again, marketers tend to get so sophisticated and trying to find the latest tooling, and just go listen to the recordings, listen to the customers.
I want to switch gears a little. I saw you had a conversation with Joe Chernov a while back on Insights Unlocked. And there was a section where y'all talked about this idea about how pipeline is table stakes as a CMO. Like, you're never going to win the market, or you're never going to win a market just trying to be the most efficient demand gen engine. And you have to take some bets that might even make a CFO uncomfortable. I'd love to dig more into that and maybe hear about any bets that you've taken where you might have made your CFO a little bit uncomfortable.
Well, we have an event coming up here this month in Seattle called Crafted, and the events that we've been running as a business were smaller. We ran them at these wonderful locations in major metros called Convene. They're these conference facilities in buildings, but they feel a lot like a WeWork. And last year, I got the question, "Oh, is this your office?" And so one of the big bets that makes my CFO uncomfortable is I'm spending a lot more on in-person events, and I'm raising the bar on that brand experience, because I don't want customers to feel like, oh, who is this company? Why do I feel like I'm going to their office? We're not a Silicon Valley startup. There's a lot that's really cool about Silicon Valley startups. And I lived in the Silicon Valley in a while, and they're full of amazing people doing incredible things. But most major enterprises aren't going to place the big bet on that kind of a business. And so we are a mature business. We have been around for a long time. We have 75 of the Fortune 100. We've got thousands of customers, the biggest nameplate logos. You see their vans driving around. You bank at their institutions. You fly in their airplanes. Like, these are our customers. And we need to show up like a company they would expect to do business with. And we also want to celebrate these people who oftentimes work in the background, user experience researchers, user experience designers, customer experience professionals. They're not, highly visible in the organization. Their work is often not necessarily seen. It may be felt, but it's a quiet thing that happens in the background. And I want these events to be a celebration of the craft of understanding the people that you're designing for, that you're building for, that you're serving. And so, I'm placing a bet that this draws us closer to our customers if we give them a better experience. And so, spending a lot more money on Seattle and London this year than I did last year, but it's important, and I think it will generate pipeline. But more importantly, it will help us with renewals. It will help us with trust. Right? Because it's also a really great content opportunity for us to showcase our innovation, helping people understand how to use us in an agentic context, which is an emerging space. So that's an example of a big bet that I'm making this year. There's a couple others that I can't talk about yet. They're coming later.
Yeah, no problem. What you just shared, it's the age-old, what's the ROI of brand conversation. I'm sure there's some models someone tried to put together to say, well, if we have this many attendees and these many are customers and we get this many renewals or this many new customers, but it's all numbers in a spreadsheet. Who knows if that's going to play out that way?
I think I don't know. There's the adage that says you can, data will support any story you want to tell, right? So while I am very much a data-driven marketer, I also believe in when you're trying to make a point, sometimes drawing on that personal anecdote that is really where you connect. And so I've often had the conversations with CFOs about the things they love, like, do you buy the same brand car often or all the time? Do you love a certain brand of clothing or shoes? Like, why? And oftentimes these goods are more expensive, right? Like they might drive a luxury car. They might be a brand loyalist to a premium brand. And if you really break it down, there's no logical reason to buy a luxury car. Toyotas are incredible vehicles. Hondas, Chevys, right? These cars they have leather, they have nav, they have all the things that you could possibly want. But yet there is this appeal. There is something about the brand and that little premium edge that makes you willing to pay tens of thousands of dollars more, right? And so what's the ROI of brand? Well, if they can get you as a lifetime customer, the ROI is enormous. And so it's that renewal, it's that going back and buying from the buying the same marque's car year after year because of your perception of their brand. Because a lot of these cars, the quality is not the same as some of the other brands, right? They're more complex. They have more issues. So it's not necessarily product quality. And I think that's where, like, another controversial point of view I have is your promise is more important than your product. At the end of the day, the promise you make, if you're a luxury brand and you don't deliver a luxury product, that's a problem. If you're a value brand and you deliver a value product without the expectation of luxury, happy days. So it's really about making sure, that your promise is there. And that's really the equation around the value of brand investments is more about, like, what happens if we don't, right? What happens to our renewal rates if we don't invest in our brand? If we don't think about the brand experiences, if we don't think about how a brand can be a differentiator, the trust that the brand carries, right? Even companies like Toyota, they have high quality products, but they produce defective vehicles on occasion. They've had recalls, they've had challenges, but there is a perception in the marketplace that these car makers produce more reliable vehicles, even if they may not be at the top of the JD Power list, right? But there's brand momentum. And so investing in that brand perception and cultivating the brand promise, even if the products don't always deliver on it, that's where the investment makes up the gap. That's the value of brand.
I wanted to go back to this event that you kind of mentioned just in passing, but did you want to tell us a bit more about Crafted and what one might expect there? I saw that folks can sign up, register, get a free or a paid ticket.
Yeah, it's on our website. So we're coming together in Seattle week after next, and which is May. I don't have my calendar up in front of me, but it's May 21st, 20. Now I'm embarrassed. I don't have the date right off the top of my head, but it's the week after next.
Seattle's May 28th and London is September 17th.
28th. Thank you. Oh boy, my events team is going to be mad at me. It's going to be an incredible experience. We're coming together. We've got sessions in the morning. We have some facilitators that we're bringing in that are focused on helping designers, UX researchers, and CX folks unpack some of the biggest challenge they're facing today. And then in the afternoon, then we're going to have some of our folks who work with customers in our professional services organizations getting even more tactical and hands-on, trying to figure out the solutions to some of the problems that have been unpacked. And then in the afternoon, we have a strong content agenda where we're going to dig into AI and how the world is changing for software development teams, for UX researchers, UX designers, CX professionals, marketers, anybody who's a builder or creator in the enterprise, and really look at how how human insights are still required and how they can play a part in the development journey, the creation journey, without slowing the process down. So there's a lot that we're going to talk about generally, as well as what's going on at UserTesting, our MCP servers, and a lot of exciting news about our products.
Yeah, sounds very exciting. You had a busy Q1. It sounds like that's just going to keep on rolling. You got more to come.
Yeah. That's the thing about momentum. You have to keep it going.
Yeah. I wanted to go back to what you had mentioned earlier when we first started recording around what you're building, because you were just talking about builders and all of this. And you had mentioned in passing that you're playing around with some vibe coding as well. I'm curious, what are you working on nowadays? What are you building?
Well, I'm building so much stuff, David. I feel like I said, this is my nerd renaissance. I'm really leaning back into my engineering roots. And look, I think the first thing is, as an executive, I feel like I have to get hands-on with these tools to understand, to separate the hype from the facts. And, I spend a lot of time reading podcasts, reels, all kinds of stuff. And it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that these tools are magic and they can do everything, right? And it's important as a leader for me to understand what they're good at and where their limitations are. I also think that there's an easy answer now, which is everybody's like, oh, just go to ChatGPT, go to Claude and just type it in and it'll do it. It'll tell you, there's a cost to that. And my view is that we have to be smart about what do we build deterministic apps for and what do we use LLMs for. And so part of what I'm doing right now is I'm looking across the marketing organization and I'm testing out how do we identify places where we want to code deterministic apps for ourselves that fill in blanks that people are typically using spreadsheets or manual processes to do. Where do we want to have wrappered LLM moments in our workflows? Because the other challenge is if you and I both went to Claude and asked Claude to answer a question, we would get different output. Not only because it's never going to give two people the same thing because of the way it works, but also because all of the memories, all of the prior interactions we've had, all of the training data you fed it about who you are and what you do and where you live, and all of those things factor in. And so you get inconsistencies when two people are using the same tool to do the same job. Like if you have two solution marketers, for example, and they're both trying to create content, if they prompt it with the same prompt, they'll get different outputs. And so the next level is to create an LLM that's wrapped in an app so that there is prompting built in and abstraction from an individual's ChatGPT or Claude to get more consistent output. And then that way you're not relying on the marketer to, because everybody prompts differently. And, there's the last thing on earth I want to do is have a spreadsheet full of prompts and be like, oh, you have to do this and build it. Like, no. Just let's build a tool that automatically adds context always. And then, so I'm building apps like that. I'm building the deterministic apps, like, UTM builders and things like that. I'm building more of the LLM wrapped tools to do more content creation kind of activity. I'm also working on agents to help us do things like, brand consistency checks, even simple things like skills, being able to build and maintain skill repositories so that you have a brand skill that will ensure that you're on brand and if you're building prototypes that it looks like it's basically leveraging the CSS that we're using in productive environments to have our prototypes look more like a real web page, for example. So there's a whole host of things that I'm working on. As in parallel, we're working on building out the actual infrastructure to make this stuff production ready and usable and maintainable in the long run.
Yeah.
But my view is I have to be out ahead of my team and understand the capabilities so that I can make decisions about what tools are worth investing in. What do we buy? What do we build? How do I direct the team? Where do I need to invest in upskilling people so that they're ready when we have the technical infrastructure in place to adopt these tools and get the most out of them, while also keeping our token cost down.
Yeah, you have to add that last part.
Yeah. And like, I am just waiting because I know, like, right, today it's a land grab. So all of the major players are just, I mean, we've seen this over and over again. Every time
subsidizing it.
Every time something new comes out, there's a land grab. Everybody's trying to hoover up the customers. And then once they have the customers, that's when the monetization happens. And so I have no illusion that token costs will go up. And so I want to make sure that as we build practice around AI, we're not just defaulting to like set it on the highest model and just let it rip. Like, let's be smart about picking the models, and wrapping them so that we can control that, as opposed to just letting each person pick and choose.
Yeah.
In a less consistent way.
Yeah, I love that you've been digging in, and I think I fell for some of the hype where, people show those screenshots of the folder structure with the different agents that they have, and they say, this is my entire marketing team. And once you look into it, it's not that impressive. It doesn't really do too much. The outputs aren't great. So it's great to hear that you're kind of seeing through all that hype. And one thing you had mentioned is identifying workflows that should be deterministic versus probabilistic. I think what I'm seeing right now a lot, even amongst our team, is using Claude for everything. Even for things that don't need an LLM capability. So I appreciate that you're doing that. Is there anything you're building right now that you feel particularly excited about, like a specific project or app that you're building right now?
Yeah, I'm. So the thing I'm working on right now, and what I want to give to my team is, part of what I'm talking to everybody about is, as we move into this agentic world, individual contributors become coaches, right? Everybody effectively becomes a manager, because now you're managing agents that are going to do these things for you. And part of what I'm working on right now is trying to figure out the loops, the agentic loops that you have to build, and to what level do you want to atomize the skills that any given agent has. So I'm looking at, how does output differ when you string together a series of agents, like a copywriter agent, a persona expert agent, a humanizer agent, a conversion rate optimizer agent, so that if you say, hey, I want to, write me a landing page from this asset, that the copywriter will go through, it'll read the asset, it'll reference the brand guide, it'll reference the messaging guide, it'll write the asset, pass it to the humanizer. The humanizer works on turning the language into something that's less AI and more human readable, human recognizable, and then passes that to the persona expert for a first review to say, does this resonate? Does this make sense? Back to the copywriter with feedback. Copywriter updates, humanizer updates, and then you have an output that's when the marketer gets involved to review, right? Versus what I feel like most people, certainly, I think even in my organization, are doing, which is they go to these tools and they go, here's the input. And it's not much of a structured input. It might be like, oh, here's a bunch of resources. Write me a landing page.
Yeah.
And then they take that back and they go, well, this is kind of hot garbage. This isn't great. And then they spend all this time making all these edits. What I want to figure out is, how do I give them a better first draft? I don't believe that there will be a world that I want to live in where it just happens without human eyes on it. But I am convinced that the AI can do a much better job at producing that first draft for the marketer to review, so that the marketer can be more efficient and make some tweaks and edits. Or after all of that, go, holy moly, this is really off. And then go dig in and go, that persona agent is misinformed. I have to go and tweak and change its memories and its context, or hey, my conversion rate optimizer, like when I look at this page, I can see, like as somebody who is responsible for landing pages, I can see the problems. So I'm going to go work on the CRO agent, sub agent to make it smarter. And that's really the shift, and from a career perspective, I think this is, if there are any younger marketers earlier, I shouldn't say younger, earlier in your career marketers listening to this, like that's the most important skill you can develop, is to figure out how to coach an agent, how to make an agent better and smarter, versus learning how to be better at doing the thing. Because ultimately, you're not going to be writing the landing page. The landing page will get written for you. It's about how do you get it to predictably, reliably build a really great first pass at that landing page that you can just tweak and then move forward.
Yeah, I think you're describing the dream and probably the very near term future, and I'm sure your team's going to be very excited once they get their hands on that.
Yeah, we'll see. There, of course, as a leader, you're always a little worried that I don't want people to feel like that this is threatening to them. Mm-hmm. The goal isn't to threaten their jobs or threaten their skills. In fact, it's an unlock. It's scaling them up. It's how do you become more effective? And my number one edict to everybody is like, I want to get you out of the business of doing the busy work. I want to free up time in your day so you can think more, because at the end of the day, and this is maybe a whole different podcast, the thing I think we're experiencing here is a shift from knowledge work to thought work. We're going from your value is in what you know to your value is in your ability to think critically. And because at the end of the day, these models know everything. I mean, within reason, but they know way more than you. And you talk about a Claude Code. Claude Code codes at a PhD level, computer science major, right? But it can't think through the customer's problem. It can't think through what the right thing to build is, because it can build everything and it'll follow some amount of logic. But at the end of the day, the value is in the human being who understands the customer, understands their pain, applies critical thinking skills, and goes, you know what? They don't need a faster horse. They need a car. Nobody's built a car before. I'm going to go build a car, and I'm going to tell Claude what car looks like, and then Claude will build me the car, right? But that's the value add, and that's where I think we're the big transition that we will see in the workplace is going from you're being hired because of what you know to a place where you're being hired for how you think and how creatively you solve problems. And in a way, I think it's a democratization, because the color of your beard, mine's white for those who are listening, and the wrinkles next to your eyes will matter less, because it's not about decades of experience. It's more about your thinking framework and how well you can approach, how well you can decode and decipher problems and come up with creative ways to address those problems. Anyway, that's my prediction for how the workplace is going to change.
I think that's a beautiful place to wrap this up and just let the listeners kind of sit with that one. Before we sign off here, and I know you just shared a lot of great advice for listeners, whether intentional or not, but do you have any additional things you want to leave listeners with? Any words of wisdom, advice, guidance, perhaps words of comfort, which you kind of just shared?
Okay. The one that I'll leave everybody with is one of my favorites. It was a piece of advice given to me a long time ago, which is go slow to go fast. And you can say it a million different ways, measure twice, cut once. There are different ways to say it. But the thing I always go back to is go slow to go fast. Think first and then accelerate. And that's why I'm playing with these tools before I roll them out. I'm not just like throwing this at everybody and saying like, go lean in. Like, yes, I'm doing a little bit of that, but I really want to be mindful of how we do these things before we go do them. So go slow to go fast, because rework is costly in terms of time.
Wonderful. Well, Johann, it was a pleasure to have you on a show. I really appreciate the time.
David, the pleasure is mine. I had a really great time, and thanks so much for having me on.